Hello. In this video we're going to talk about how to perform an extraction, and I'm going to run through the separate elements that are needed to be put together in order to perform the extraction correctly. We'll begin by talking about how we protect ourselves and identify that someone has an entity present in their system. Then we will go on to the procedure of how to actually perform the extraction. I hope you find this video interesting, and we're going to begin by looking at how to identify if someone has an entity. So, the first way we can identify if someone has an entity is to use a pendulum. A pendulum is a really useful dowsing tool, and it's highly recommended that you get a pendulum for situations like these. People can develop entities as blocks on their emotional patterns or negative belief systems. These entities then develop or grow in various ways and then will attach to that block in their system. This is why someone might identify that they're not moving forward in their life, or the things that they want to change are not happening. In fact, this tends to be the main reason why. So the entity will sit on the person's energy and will try and hold them in that pattern, and they will find the resistance to change impossible to overcome. So if someone comes to you in that place where they seem to be unable to change, yet they want to, it's worth asking if there's an entity attached to the person. Now, when you're using the pendulum, it's important to cleanse it, and we're going to use a cleansing technique which we'll use in many of the other things that we do in this extraction process, and it's called the Shopla, or the shamanic breath. And the Shopla, the shamanic breath, comes from the diaphragm. For those that are singers, breathe from the diaphragm, and we take a nice big deep breath from the bottom of the lungs, and then we push the sound, the breath outwards in a force, so it has a real power to it. The Shopla sounds like this, or looks like this. Shoo! Shoo! And that's how you push that energy of your own life force from that Dan Shen power out through the breath. And you can use that breath to cleanse the crystals. And we're going to be using the Shopla to cleanse the crystals as we do the rest of this work. So we're going to use the Shopla, and that's cleansed the crystal. And now we can use the pendulum. When we're using pendulums, the first thing to do is to calibrate the pendulum. So we ask it to show us yes and no. So show me yes. So it works better in my left hand. And now show me no. And you can see the pendulum now showing me no. And then return to neutral. We'll talk about pendulums more later on in class, but for now it's simple to ask the question, does this person have an entity? I do. I'm asking for myself, obviously. And there we go. Have an entity. What a surprise. So do I have an entity? Yes, I have an entity. And I need to be removed. Excellent. So you can see this is the first way of testing. Now, if you wanted to, you could ask a follow-up question. Do I have one entity? Yes. Do I have two entities? No. Oh, that's good. So I have one entity, not two. Well, that's handy to know. And you can ask as many times until you've gone up to the number of entities that they have. So that's the first way of identifying if somebody has entities in their system. Okay, so the second technique that we can use to identify if someone has an entity in their system is a technique called muscle testing. Now, muscle testing operates on a principle that the truth is subconsciously a strong force inside of us, whereas when we are speaking an untruth, even if we don't realise it, there's a subconscious friction that means we don't have the same power. So the way to do muscle testing is to have the person stand in front of you or next to you and hold out of their arm. So I'm just going to ask for an arm to appear for me. There we go. If arm can just get a little bit, kneel down arm. There we go. That's perfect. So here's arm. So arm is going to, thank you. So we're going to ask this, use this to demonstrate the muscle testing, showing that the truth is strong in somebody. So if we ask the person to think of something that they believe is true, something that also they value. So we could say, think of something that you really, really love. Yeah, hold your arm as stiff as a board. That's the most important thing. You keep thinking about holding your arm stiff and then think about something you really, really love. Yeah, can you think about something you really love? And now we're going to try and push it. There's quite a bit of resistance there. Okay, now hold that arm nice and stiff, keep it stiff, but think about a big smelly poo, big smelly turd. Yeah, no strength in there. You see, so something that's positive and strong keeps that resistance. You can also use something like a statement that you know is true. So we can say, yeah, you are alive. Yeah, that you are alive. Think that you are alive. Think you're alive. Okay. Ah, there's quite a bit of resistance there. Okay. Now think that you're a sheep. Now think that you're a sheep. Now think that you're a sheep. There we go. I mean, that's silly, but it demonstrates the point. You know, so you can ask that person, you know, to just feel their resistance with that truth or false statement. And then you can go to the next stage. Once you know their truth or their false, you can get them to hold their hands out and say, right, do you have an entity? Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, I can feel that one. Or you could ask the opposite question. So that's, I am completely free of entities. Oh, no, I'm not completely free of entities. Okay, I have an entity. Oh, yeah. Okay, I don't have any entities. Oh. I can't hold it up. It works even with yourself. So I've got one entity. Oh, yes. I've got two entities. Oh, no. I've got... So there we go. So I confirmed with the other one, I've got one entity. So I need to have an entity removed. And we've identified through two different techniques that I have. So the next part is how we're going to prepare to actually remove the entity. So, what we're going to do now is talk about the two different protections that we put on ourselves, okay, before we start the extraction process. Now, this can be done at any point. You may want to do it before the client arrives after you open sacred space, or you may wait until just before. I generally wait till just before so I can remember that that protection's strong. So after I've identified that the person has an entity, either using the pendulum or the muscle testing, or potentially using my own intuition or oracle cards, there's lots of different ways of identifying it. I will then prepare to use this technique in certain circumstances to remove the entity. So the first thing we need to do is to protect ourselves, as I've already said. So there's two ways we do that. The first way is called locking on, locking off. Yeah, and this is to protect the hands, okay, from accidentally pulling in any energy from the person or allowing the entity to come out of the crystal and into our hands as we're doing the extraction. Now, this uses the power of your mind, and you'll need to use your imagination to a certain extent in order to, and your intention, in order to really power this one and make it strong. The technique itself is very simple, and I shall demonstrate now. Okay, around each wrist, you link your fingers to create a circle. Around each wrist, link your fingers to create the circle. And then we pinch between the thumb and the forefinger, pinch that closed. And then we pinch that closed. Okay, so around the wrist with the fingers. Yeah, it doesn't matter if your fingers are too small to go all the way around. The intention's what's important. Around, pinch, pinch. Okay. Now, while you're doing this, locking on, sealing your hand's energy, I want you to imagine it like a silver band of light around the wrist, a silver band of light around the wrist, and then like a golden glove, okay? And that seals and protects your hands, from any entities coming in while you're doing the extraction. Now, it's advisable at the end, once you've done the extraction, to lock off. And that, just imagine taking those off and releasing that energy. So just imagine taking those off and release that energy. So have a practice with that, locking on and locking off. Okay. So the next part of the protection is something we call the Shield of the Arcana. And again, this is a very simple way of just protecting this part of your energy field. Okay, from the sacral, the solar plexus, and the heart chakra are all vulnerable to entities. Okay, and so sometimes it's important that we put this protection on to make ourselves feel good. Now, because this is a video, this is going to be opposite to what it should be. So you're going to need to bear in mind that when I'm showing you how to draw this protection on yourself. The protection itself is very simple. It's simply a circle with a cross in it. Now that circle with a cross represents the earth and the elements, and also the directions and the medicine wheel. And we draw that circle starting here with the heart and going clockwise around the body, down below the solar plexus and in front of the sacral chakra, and then back up again to the heart, and then we go down to the sacral chakra and then across. And then do it again, round, down to the sacral, back to the heart, down past the solar plexus, down to the sacral again, and then go across. Okay, go across from the middle, protecting. So then you've got the shield, around you. The shield of the Arcana around you. And you can imagine it as a glowing light. You could see it as a shield, a physical shield if you wanted. Whatever visualization works for you. And now that's done, you're nice and protected, you're ready to go, okay, and we can start getting that entity out of the person. We're now going to prepare the crystals that we have for extraction. These are our extraction crystals. Now, the double terminated clear quartz is the ones that you need. We've talked about this before. They're nice and clear as you can get. Okay, the size between sort of 1.5 inches to 2 inches. That's how big these guys are. Okay, now it doesn't take long to prepare the crystal. All you need to do is use the shamanic breath, okay, to clear it. So as we did before with the pendulum, the Chopla, the shamanic breath, shoo, 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 shoo. And that's the crystal ready to go. Okay, so now we're ready to do the actual extraction itself. So the person we're doing the extraction on is here, and we're behind them. Okay, we've locked off and we've pulled the shield of the Arcana, so we're all protected. Yeah, we've got the crystal cleansed and ready to go, and now we're going to have the crystal in our hand as we're doing all the rest of the next stuff. Okay, so the first bit we're going to do, okay, is the lean. Okay, and this is really important. This shows that the client trusts you, okay, enough to be able to release the entity into your crystal. Okay, so it's really important that we get the client ready to do that by placing our hands, yeah, across their shoulders like this, yeah, and then we can ask the client if you would just lean back, yeah, like this, stiff like a board. That's it, until you feel their weight, yeah, and you're taking their weight, yeah. Now you can move them back up again because you've established that trust, yeah. Now we need to do the bicycle pump technique, okay. So the next bit we do, now from now on, it's very important we maintain physical contact with the client at all times from now on. So we're going to do pump the entity from wherever it is in the body to this point in the middle of the shoulder blades in order for us to release it. Okay, and we do that by starting down at the base of the spine, using the Chopla, the shamanic breath as I showed you earlier. Okay, so the entity is now located at the top of the shoulder blade in the spine. So now we're ready. The entity is placed at the top of the spine and it's ready for us to do the extraction. Now at this point, I'm going to put the crystal in my hand, balanced between my thumb and my little finger like that. So I'm cupping the points. This is very important. This will hold the entity in the crystal once it's been extracted from the person. Okay? So now, while maintaining contact with the client, I'm going to move around the body. Okay? And coming down the arms. Yeah, very gently. Now, very lightly, just put your hands over that person. Okay, that crystal, that's good. So now we've got very light and gentle connection, because once the entity has been pulled into the crystal, I'm going to pull away. Okay, so now I'm going to get the client, if you can count down out loud from 20 down to 1 out loud, and then when you get to 1, start going up again to 20 and then back down again for as long as you can until I pull away. Once I've pulled away, you won't need to keep saying the numbers out loud, okay?
20, 19, 18.
Now I'm going to use my third eye, my energy, to get this entity down. Oh, come on.
11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
So now we've got the entity in the crystal. Now you can see that I'm holding it, keeping it trapped inside the crystal, okay, using the fingers. Now I'm going to release this straight away by taking it outside. However, if you can't, yeah, what you can do, if you have a sacred cloth or your mezza, yeah, you can cover the crystal with the mezza cloth, okay, to keep the entity trapped until you're ready to release it. But for us, we're going to go outside and we're going to do this right now. Okay, so I've got the entity and we're now ready to release it. So I've come outside to release the entity and return it back to where it belongs, which is Great Spirit. Now there's a specific way we release the entities. We go to each of the directions and we ask each of the directions if they're willing to accept the entity until we find the one that's willing to accept it, and then we release it to that direction. So with this entity, we're going to start by going to the south. Okay, so the south is this direction. So I turn to the south and I ask the south in my mind or out loud, do you need to accept this entity? No, it's not a yes, it's a no. Anything other than a yes, it's a no. So it's a no. So now I turned to the west, okay, and then I asked the west, the direction of the west, will you accept this entity? And the answer is yes. Okay, so now using the Shopler, we're going to release the entity. Now you do this quite quickly, so take it from there, turn it like that, and send it out as quickly as possible. Ideally you want to go like that straight away, and that fires the entity away to that direction where the Guardian will hold and recycle that energy. And that is how you remove an entity. So I released that entity into the west because that's where it was ready to go. But if it hadn't been ready, I would have gone to the north and then the east. Now, in the little handout that we prepared, there's a little bit of detail about what each direction means when we're releasing the entity. Now we've released the entity, it's important to sit with the client and give them any aftercare that's necessary. And then you can close the space and finish the extraction. So I hope that makes that understandable. We'll talk about it in lesson. So I'm wishing you all the best, and I'll see you soon. Bye.